Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the live stream tonight. We're going to be finishing up our study of relationships tonight, and we're just very thankful that you're taking the time to join in on our study, and hopefully you guys can take something from tonight. I'm just going to be honest, this is one of my favorite parts of Romans 12 that we're covering tonight. We're going to be covering a lot, but I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So just buckle up, grab your Bible, and we'll jump into it here in just a minute. Jacob, how have you been, man?
Been good, man. Hopefully, we actually have some guidelines now. We know what we're looking at. This will be the last live stream that we do that doesn't before we actually get the opportunity to see each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good news.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll kind of go over some of the guidelines for that at the end here. But I've really enjoyed getting. Usually when I do this relationship class, and we kind of morph this from the relationship class I put together a few years ago I did it for the youth group and we did it for the college group, and it's more based on romantic relationships and stuff. But it's been a lot of fun for me to get to kind of explore just general relationships, because I think that's something that we don't normally do, because when we start looking at deeper relationships, we automatically go to the romantic relationships,
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun for me, I think, just to get to focus more on everyday relationships and the deeper meaning behind those. And I've really enjoyed getting to look at it and where we've gone so far. I think it's been uplifting to me. Hopefully it has been for you guys as well. There's not always easy things to say. Like, I feel like sometimes we're stepping on some people's toes and our own toes oftentimes.
Yeah, you step on my toes quite a few times during this whole thing. So,
I think it's one of those things that one thing that I feel like we fail at more than anything is treating each other the way that Jesus wants us to treat each other.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing he told us to do is, pay attention to the way you treat each other. And you look at the world and all these things that are going on, and just mainstream media, the top news stories never have things to do with people treating each other nicely, hardly. It's always, horrible things of how people are just treating other people in terrible ways, and we allow that to, I think, sometimes get into our just everyday relationships, just because that's the norm. Mm-hmm. And unless we reset, and I think we've been given a pretty good opportunity to reset and reevaluate a lot of those things. So hopefully this has been helpful for that purpose. I know it has been for me, for sure.
Yeah, same here, man.
So we left off in Romans. We've been in Romans 12 kind of going through this. We spent a lot of time in the beginning looking at, what the purpose of relationships was, the general idea that God is relational at his very core. We're made in God's image, so we are relational at our very core. And, looking at a lot of those things, and everything that we've looked at in Romans 12, it's kind of going back to that idea.
Yeah.
That, we do things because God first did them for us, and we show love because God first loved us, and we have all those verses that we went through. And we spent a lot of time building up to even Romans 12 with Matthew 5 and looking at all those things that Jesus kind of put for, if you're going to have a foundational relationship in him, that these things have to be in the relationship in order for it to be, with respect and honor and all those kind of things. So when we got to Romans 12 and Paul, going through the Romans who were having a hard time getting along themselves, and he kind of lays it out for them and says, look, if you're going to be Christians, this is how you've got to start viewing each other. And I think that if you really look at what he says and what we've looked at starting in verse 9 going through, we'll finish up 21 tonight, it's amazing that if you actually put those things into practice, what he's saying, don't just take them at face value and read them and be like, oh yeah, that'd be nice, but say, no, this is something that I have to do. And your relationships will not look the same. Mm-hmm. They can't. Yeah. They can't look the same if you read these things and allow them to really change you the way that Paul's telling them that they have to let them change them.
Yeah.
so I guess we can kind of jump into the text, if you're good with that.
Sure thing, man.
I think we kind of left off, last week with verse 13, contributing to the needs of the saints and practicing hospitality, and to seek out, it says to seek to show hospitality to one another. And that's just, an interesting way to look at it, and that's kind of where we left off. But he picks up kind of right there, just continuing to hammer home these kind of difficult points. So starting in verse 14, I think that's where you're going to start at.
All right, starting in verse 14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep.
Can we just stop right there for a second? I think it's so funny, and I don't know if funny is the right word, but as Paul is telling them this, he says, bless those who persecute you. And it's like Paul does this every once in a while. He'll start something and he'll reiterate it just so he makes sure you get it.
Yeah.
Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse.
Yeah.
Like he just hammers that home, like stops it and says, okay, you heard me right? Those who we're talking about people who persecute you. You bless them, and not do not curse them. Every time I read it, it just kind of makes me laugh, because I can imagine Paul trying to drive that point home of, you have that person that's like, okay, I get it, whatever. He's like, no, I'm not going to let you just go past this and say, oh, I must have missed that. He stops you and says, no, make sure you understand what I'm telling you. Bless and do not curse. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Well, do you have a practical way to look at that? Like, is there something that's...
And we'll get to it a little more, because I think that's kind of the whole point he's driving home, is about our actions and how our actions are just supposed to be different.
Yeah.
It sounds dumb to say that, to say, I'm going to be extremely nice. Like, to bless someone is to do something so good for them that they couldn't imagine it. That they don't deserve it, they can't imagine it. To bless someone is to do that, and to say, someone that's making my life harder, intentionally making my life harder, that I'm going to go and I'm going to intentionally do things to them that is better, to make their life better. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't make sense in any sense. We don't even do that for people that we do like and are nice to us, that we just go out of our way to make sure that their life is easier, that they get something that they don't really even need or deserve. We make sure that they get that. We don't do that for people that we like, much less someone who's actively making our life harder, which persecution is actively making your life harder. To think that he's saying, I'm sure on both sides of this, the Jews have felt persecuted by the Roman Christians throughout this, and probably the Gentile Christians have almost felt a little persecuted by the Jewish Christians, as they've tried to fight for control over the Roman church here. They probably both felt like they've been wronged, actively done wrong by the other group. So he's almost telling them, look, even if someone is doing you harm, doing you wrong, you've got to go out of your way to make sure that their life is better. Mm-hmm. And he's going to get a little bit more into that, I think, later on in describing that. But just that idea, a practical way of today. I mean, the big thing, the thing that causes, I think, the most controversy today is political views, right? And we're not going to get political on here, but if someone says something in a political stance that the other person doesn't agree with, it's like the most disgusting thing they can read now. And it makes them look at that person differently. It makes them lose respect for that person. And if instead of that being your reaction to someone saying something that brings so much offense to you, if you were to instead show that person why they're wrong about that, why they're wrong about you, why they're wrong about your stance, instead of validating it, I think that's one big way that he's saying, look, if you bless someone that's persecuted you, if you bless someone who's calling you down, you're showing them a reason why they are wrong about you. And if we're representing Jesus and someone's trying to say something bad about Jesus, you do things to say, no, that's not true, and I'm going to show you why it's not true. But like I said, I think he gets more into that going down.
Yeah. Okay, we'll pick it back up in verse 16. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by so doing you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
And that, he just kind of sums it up. Don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. I mean, that's summing up, to me, our whole relationship class.
Yeah.
But really, everything we've talked about the last few weeks in Romans 12 can be summed up, I think, with that idea of don't be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. The idea that we are not going to outdo evil with evil.
Yeah.
If evil is our response to evil, then the world's just going to become more evil. Mm-hmm. The only way we change things, the only way we look different, the only way that we represent Jesus, who is different, is if we take the evil in the world and respond to that evil with good.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things for us in our culture today to wrap our heads around, I think, just because the idea of justice being done, and I think that's, we'll get into a little bit more into that, but exactly what Paul speaks to. He says, if you try to take justice into your own hands, you're always going to be doing the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to treat people the way you're supposed to treat people if you feel like you need to take justice into your own hands. And for us, that's something that's really hard, I think. And the thing that destroys relationships with people that we love is that idea of justice. If someone does something wrong to you, you can't forgive them until they are equally wronged, Mm-hmm. And it's just destroyed so many relationships that I know of in the church, right? People that claim to be of the same family, and they've allowed this idea to tear them apart. And Jesus says, hey, if the kingdom, which is what we're supposed to be really focusing on, is the kingdom, what we want to be a part of, if that's really going to be what we're doing here, then you're going to have to do things that are different. Mm-hmm. And kind of what my mind goes to is, if you're the same person you were whenever you met Jesus, then you haven't met Jesus. You haven't allowed Jesus into your life. If you're the same person you are as you were when you first came into contact with Jesus or understanding who Jesus was, then you're not Jesus. Jesus isn't really with you, because Jesus, the one thing he continually does is change you.
Yeah.
Change you to be more like him as you're striving to do that. So unless you're doing things that don't make sense, you can't really, I don't think, claim that you're living the life you're supposed to live.
Well, I think it's interesting that you point out that, whenever we invite, or whenever we have a relationship with Jesus, and how that changes us is, normally that changes us by bringing relationships together.
Yeah.
And,
definitely.
even just looking at this thing and going back to what we've been talking about, week one all the way through this is giving what you've received.
Yeah.
This whole principle of bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse them. I mean, that is something that we receive from Christ first, because for while we were still sinners, Christ died for us and showed us love even when we didn't deserve it. And now, because we've experienced that from him, it seems like that's what we give to other people.
Definitely. And I think, and even looking back at that, and I'll let you speak to this for a while, because I know this is something that you're passionate about. In verse 16, where he jumps out and he says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. But that first part of live in harmony with each other, some verses say, be of the same mind towards one another. Yeah. And I think why we agree that the live in harmony translation probably speaks to it a little better is because we have to understand one of the biggest obstacles in relationships is differences.
Yeah.
Right? Differences of opinion, differences of culture, differences of value, all these things. That's usually the biggest obstacles in relationships. So how, with those obstacles and those differences, can you have the type of relationship that God calls you to have with someone? How does that become possible?
Yeah, well, I think they'll live in harmony with one another. The way that that's put, kind of the illustration there and that wording is so beautiful because I mean we experience it every Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, we come here and we have all the different parts singing different notes, but when they come together, it makes this beautiful sound.
Yeah.
I've been part of. I've performed at country music shows. I've done choir in college, stuff like that. So I've been around harmony a lot, and I've seen it go really well, and I've also seen it go really bad. And I think one of the things that causes it to go really bad, and this is something that my choir teacher drilled into all of our heads, is you have to listen first. Like, when it comes to singing in harmony with people, you have to be listening first, because when you listen, you realize what note you're supposed to be hitting. And I think that is something that just goes all the way through life, because a lot of times we don't want to listen, we want to sing our note, and we want to make sure that everyone's listening to our note, and based off of the note we're singing, that everybody lives that way. But I think that instead we should actually be looking to listen to others first and listen to the sound that's going on around us, and from that, realizing what note we're supposed to be singing.
So obviously the section right before this, Paul talks about how, in verse 4, he says, "For just as every body has many members, all the members do not have the same function." And it kind of speaks to it, but I think what speaks to what you're talking about more is actually what he says right after that. After the live in harmony with one another, he says, "Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation." It's almost like, and right before that, right? "Blessed with those who persecute you, and blessed." In order for you to have the relationship you're supposed to have, you've got to not feel like you know everything, and got to be willing to listen to everybody, even the lowest. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes the lowest opinion, the lowest version, the lowly in the room is what's going to be the standard for everyone else. That's what you're going to have to go to in order to get everyone on the same level, is going to what the lowest in the room is. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we always, talk so much about, whoever is the best comes in and takes the lead, and we just do what they want to do. But sometimes, and teachers will tell you this, I think too, sometimes the best way to start is to start, and it's kind of where you share with Jesus. If you're going to share something with Jesus, you start with the person in the room that knows the least about Jesus. Mm-hmm. And start where they are, because you may have heard something along the way that you have in your mind is true that actually isn't true. Yeah. And has warped your understanding of who Jesus is. And it's the same thing with relationships. You may have had something in your mind that warped your idea of this other person. And unless you start with the lowest, the least known facts, and build your way all the way up to where that relationship is supposed to be, and really talk about where each person is in the relationship, you're not going to really unless everyone's on the same knowledge of that. Like, everyone's been brought to the same understanding. Everyone's listened to what everybody else has and has gotten on that same note. Because they've heard where everyone else is, you're not going to be able to understand where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and I also think it could be very hard, and I think this goes back to what he says in verse 15 is, "Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep." I think that sometimes we have a hard time living in harmony because we get jealous of other people's note that they're singing in this illustration, is we see somebody else doing something, or maybe we see that somebody else has something, or anything along those lines, and instead of celebrating with them, we decide to either be jealous with them. We might even criticize their gift, and try and down talk them so that we feel better about ourselves. And instead of just saying, "Man, you are using your gift, and it is awesome. I am totally inspired by your gift and the thing that you're doing," or even weeping with people. That's another thing that goes into that whole harmony thing, is actually affirming people's emotions instead of looking at them as problems and saying that they're not valid.
Yeah, and I mean what you hit on there is, when you talk about the differences, is one of those fundamental things. misunderstanding is the other one,
Yeah.
right? Differences in misinformation, misunderstanding, and the fact that and I think what Paula speaks to here in the judgment a little bit later is whenever and not being, wise in our own estimation, if you try to just base everything off of your gut reaction, right? And say, well, that person's just, they're doing it for show. I'm not even going to give them a time of day because I've seen them, I know their personality, I know this, they're doing it for show. Even if they are, there's probably a deeper thing there that they need your attention in some other way.
Yeah.
They're obviously, even if they're doing it for show, they're calling out for something that they need.
Yeah.
Whether it's rejoicing or weeping, right?
Yep.
And if you start looking at things that way, instead of just going off your gut reaction and saying, let me go to where they're at. Let me see where they're at and really try to get into the mind that they are in so we can get back into harmony, right? The only way we get back into harmony is to go where there's not harmony and fix that to bring it where harmony's at. And I think sometimes we just want to throw that out.
Yeah.
But if you throw out a part, the harmony's not there.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It's not what it's supposed to be. It's missing something.
Yeah. And that's funny that you say that. There was one year in course at the school that I went to that we were down because just things happened. People had to drop out of choir, and we were down to 4 people, but we were unbalanced.
Yeah.
We had we had only sopranos and girls. There was nobody that could sing alto, and there was 3 of us guys. And so I had to sing the alto part because we started trying to do it with just sopranos, just tenor and bass.
Yeah.
And it sounded okay, but like some of the songs, our director was just like, we gotta have somebody to fill in the soprano. So I sang, or the alto. So I sang alto an octave lower.
Yeah.
But it was all about, that was just the thing. Once a part is missing, it doesn't work anymore.
Exactly.
But I want to hit on what you just said because I remember something that really changed my perspective about a lot of my relationships was when I was in counseling a couple of years ago. And I remember one session I was talking to my counselor, and we were talking about this whole misunderstandings things, and he said something that's really stuck with me, and that is that everyone's perspective would change if they realized that, and I'm going to quote him here, but he said everyone's perspective would change if everyone realized that no one is trying to make your life suck.
Yeah.
You know? And I was just like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's something that you kind of got to sit with for a second, but then it's like, man, those actions that really frustrate me that people do, they're not doing them to try and make me miserable.
Yes.
But like you said, they're trying to call out something that they need.
Yeah.
And if we could maybe instead of just criticizing them whenever they do something wrong, maybe instead of criticizing them, what if we were more curious as to like why that action's happening? Maybe they misunderstood us, or maybe something else is going on that we don't know about. But just trying to understand that people aren't just trying to make our life miserable. Like there's always something behind the action.
And I think, if we're calling to be like Jesus, if there's ever an example of someone who is able to do that, to just look at, say, well, what is this person really needing? When the lame man was there and he tells him his sins are forgiven, everybody kind of balks at him like, oh, that's going to do him a lot of good. And he says, actually, that's exactly what he needs. If you want me to say get up and walk, so you get up and walk, and he shows him, get up and walk. But that's the man's ability to walk had nothing to do more compared to the ability of his soul being right. And what he actually needed was for his soul to understand that just because he couldn't walk didn't make him less to Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that's something so important with Jesus, that he doesn't always fix the ailment first because he wants you to know, hey, I'm not here because you're perfect in every way. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because you're not.
Yeah.
And I'm here to show you that I don't need you to fix everything about yourself before I'm going to come in and give you what you need.
Yeah.
But for us, a lot of times in relationships, we want everybody to fix the problems we have with them before we can give them what they need. Mm-hmm. And so many times, that's where there's this disconnect, because the person can't get what they need to understand why they need to change themselves, because you're not going to give it to them unless they change first.
Yeah.
And it's just this road that's not anywhere close to what Jesus did. Jesus showed them, hey, I'm here to give you what you need, regardless of what your ailments are, what everybody else sees about you. I'm going to give you what you need, because it's what you need.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out the rest as we go.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that to me is that is exactly what put him on the cross.
Right, yeah.
Because when people were thinking about a Messiah coming, they were thinking about somebody who was going to come and criticize people.
Right.
It's like the Messiah's going to come and he's going to show everyone that our group is the right group.
Yeah.
And everybody else is just going to be off. But then Jesus came in and showed this incredible compassion to people that was just unheard of.
Right.
You know, I mean, and putting that into modern day, you know, I don't know, this may sound really bad, but it's almost like the people then thought, okay, well, Jesus is going to come in and he's going to just honor only the Church of Christ.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But then Jesus came in and he was honoring people outside of that. And that upset a lot of people because they were expecting Jesus to come in and honor them. Almost like Jesus would come in and feed their pride.
Right.
You know, instead of coming and just showing that we are all equal in the eyes of God.
Which takes us to this next point, I think. Whenever Paul says, repay no one evil for evil. And this is what he says next. I think it's so insightful, because I think a lot of times we skip down to verse 18. And 18 is really important, and that's probably where we're going to spend the most, we're going to spend the most of our time. We've already spent a lot of time on that stuff. But, verse 18, if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Mm-hmm. That's a verse that I think everybody knows, but nobody wants to know it, you know?
Yeah.
Or they use like, well, it's not on me. You know?
Exactly.
Like that's their problem if that's. But what takes the ability away to do that is the verse right before. Whenever Paul says, repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in sight of all. So think about how to give someone honor in every aspect.
Yeah.
And the result of you being so thoughtful that you give honor, even to the people that does evil to you, that you repay them with honor, that you show them goodness, regardless of where they're at, of what they've shown you. That whenever you do that, that takes away the ability of other people, the people that are doing you wrong, to have a problem with you.
Yeah.
If you're going to say, this person, they've done evil towards me, but you know what? I'm going to search my heart, and I'm going to see how I can make their life better. Regardless of what they've done, my whole focus is to be thoughtful in the mind of, how do I make this person's life better? And he says, that's what you do to all. Mm-hmm. Not some, not everyone. Your thought process should be, how do I show them honor? How do I show them that I place them on a high level?
Yeah.
That I don't put them below myself. I put them in a place that I'm going to show them honor. If you're showing everyone honor, yes, there's going to be people who are insecure in themselves that they may still treat you bad. Those are probably the people that need to be shown honor in that way the most. Whenever they continually try to do things to you and you just come back with a smile and let them know, hey, whatever it is that you're going to try to do, I've got something giving me strength behind me. The Word of God, Jesus, the Spirit, gives me such comfort and passion that there's nothing that you can do that's going to throw me off enough that I'm going to dishonor you. Mm-hmm. Even if you dishonor me. Yeah. I'm going to place you on a higher than myself, which is what Jesus calls us to do, right? That you humble yourself, that you place people in front of you, that you become the last. The first shall become last, the last shall become first. All those things he's trying to preach to his disciples over and over again, getting them to understand, look, this is all about making sure that you never put yourself above someone else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because as soon as you do that, that's going to give them an excuse to look at you and not have the right relationship with you. The way that it's possible, as so far as it depends on you, the way that you make it, where it's not on you to be at peace with all men, is that you constantly show honor to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we read that verse of, um, you know, to as far as possible, so far as when you live peaceably with all, we say, well, I did my thing. They know who I am. I put it out there. I said I was sorry. They can do whatever they want to with it. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like that's living at peace with all. And I think what Paul says, what Jesus says is, no, putting it yourself to be living at peace with all is making sure everyone knows that you don't think that you're holier than them.
Yeah.
That you don't feel like you're higher you're more honorable than them. And you're so thoughtful in how you interact with people that they can tell that you're giving them honor and everything. And I think that's what's missing so much in our relationships is that ability to look at someone and say, I can tell that person is constantly thoughtful of how they're going to bring honor to this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if that little thing is put in there, and the reason we're able to do that, obviously, is what we've been talking about from the beginning, is the example of Jesus and what he does. And he gives us all these steps. Hey, make sure that you respect this person, that you honor this person, that you value this person. All those things contribute to you being able to look at someone and be thoughtful in how you bring them honor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really appreciate the fact that Paul does say, if possible.
Yeah.
Because, we can get to the point where we do show so much honor, but it's rejected just because of, we are imperfect, so we will hurt people along the line. And sometimes it may get beyond someone's ability to forgive that.
Yes. And that's true. And that, I think that what it goes back to, I think, is we're in control of our actions, not anyone else's actions.
Yeah.
But with that, the fact that he does say, if possible, sometimes I feel like we use that as an excuse.
Yeah.
But it is important to understand that you can't force anyone to do anything.
Exactly.
But just the way Jesus is not going to force you to follow him, but you know what he's going to do? He's going to be right there continually offering that to you. And so for us to be able to, it's not necessarily that everyone has to like us and isn't going to be able to use things that maybe aren't true to not like us. It's the fact that that person knows that if anything ever was to change on their part, that on my end, this relationship can be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not what's preventing this from being fixed.
Yeah.
But I agree.
That's spot on.
Because sometimes we can try to force things and make it worse, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes I've even tried to define myself by the sense that someone was rejecting me, and that's what kind of led me to that place of always trying to force it with that person.
Yes.
And it doesn't work,
Yeah.
You can't, the best thing that you can give someone a lot of times is just freedom.
Yeah.
Is you
Definitely.
You doing your, you showing them honor constantly, but at the same time giving them freedom to do whatever with it. And that's scary. I mean, it is really terrifying.
Well, and that's how you just phrase that is so important. That you don't get to decide how they react to the honor you give them. You don't get to decide how they receive the honor that you give them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest thing, because we're really good with giving honor to people if they receive it in a way that they give honor back to you.
Yeah.
But what if you're giving honor to someone and they don't give it back to you?
Exactly.
Well, then it's like, I'm not giving them honor. You see how they treat me? And that's where I think he's saying that's your natural reaction. That's the reaction that the world did to Jesus, right? is Jesus kept giving them this. They didn't reciprocate it, the honor back to him. They put him on a cross instead. And where Jesus could have said, look, I tried. I did my best. I humbled myself. I didn't come here and make myself a king. I did everything. I served you guys and offered this honor.
Yeah.
And this is what you're going to do. I'm out.
Yeah.
But that's not what Jesus did, and that's why that's not what we do.
Yeah.
Right?
And isn't it? Yeah. And isn't it crazy that he still doesn't condemn us if we don't
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a
Yeah.
point fingers thing. It's, he didn't come to condemn us. He came to show us what love is.
Right.
And that's
And he continually gives you the opportunity
exactly.
To do that, and doesn't, rip it away at
Exactly.
the first sight of you rejecting it. And praise be to God for that,
Mm-hmm.
But I think it goes into, and he just kind of drives it home with this next section, where he talks about revenge. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.
Yeah.
But if your enemy is hungry, feed him, and if he is thirsty, give him drink. For in so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And I'm going to be honest. I kind of wish that Paul wouldn't have put that last phrase in there.
Mm-hmm.
The part about leaping coals on their head.
Yeah.
I know it's true. It's the fact that, and it's what Jesus, continually. I think maybe that's why I have such a hard problem with it, is because the fact that Jesus is so giving and honor to us, that the more we reject it, the more it's on us, and the more we're going to have to deal with that later.
Mm-hmm.
But just thinking about that it puts us in the mindset of, hey, once we try to decide what is just, once we try to decide what is right, and I'm not talking, obviously, our country has laws and a justice system, and that's part of it. God, put that into place. He allowed that to happen. That's well and good. Should we want justice to be done in those things? But if justice not being done in your mind through that process or any process changes your relationship of giving that person honor, then we've failed.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we've got to be different.
Yeah.
Is that we can be disappointed that justice isn't done, and I think we've seen a lot of things in our country and other places lately that happens so much with race, with just people in general, with politics, with all those things. Once we start allowing that to control the way we treat other people, that's where we fail. It's not that we can't be disappointed in it or want things to happen. It's the fact that once we start allowing those things to control our actions towards others, that's where we get in trouble. And whenever you see, in politics is probably the worst place you see it, is you've got Christian people on there just talking bad, and even if that person is a terrible person, but saying all these horrible things about them, how does that represent anything about what Jesus told us to do?
Mm-hmm.
And we say, and this is where we kind of step on toes, and we don't want to do that, but I think it's one of the hardest hits that goes to people of Christianity and to Christian people is when we try to say that we can act differently in politics. Like it's a different realm. Almost like the way we do with sports, too.
Mm-hmm.
I lived that life for a long time where I felt like in sports, all the Christian stuff can go out. While I'm on the court, it doesn't matter. I can say whatever I want to. I can do it because it's all in the name of winning.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Luckily, I learned later in life that that's not true, and I'm competitive still, but I've allowed to not let that overtake my actions. And I think that's what this all comes down to, is we're responsible for not the actions of others, but you're always responsible for your actions, and your actions always matter. Mm-hmm. Always.
Yeah.
What you do matters. Even if it doesn't seem like it matters to this person, it matters to Jesus, because if you're representing Him, what you do matters. And that's the mindset I think in our relationships we have to start taking into it is, could what I say give anyone the impression that Jesus would react in a way that He said He would? Because one thing that's really hard for people, I think, in Christianity is we try to make Jesus keep promises that He didn't make.
Yeah.
We try to make Jesus keep promises for the promises we make. And we put that on Jesus to keep it whenever He never said He would. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we, in our promise to Jesus, try to say, well, it's different. This is a different situation. And in relationships a lot, that's where it takes the biggest hit, is anything that I do, am I going to represent Jesus in a way that He doesn't look like who He said He was? anything that I say, if Jesus was to say that, would that make him different than who he said he was? Does it change the actions that he actually did?
Mm-hmm.
Because our actions matter. And that's why every one of our actions matter in relationships and how we do it. And making sure that even whenever it's not easy or it doesn't make sense to give respect or honor to someone that when they don't deserve it, whenever they're actually persecuting us and making our life better. The reason that we do that is because that's what Jesus did. And if we're going to claim to be his, we know that if we claim to be his and we do that, we're honoring him in the way that we're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. As it wraps up, what kind of jumps out at you?
I guess the biggest thing that just keeps coming back in my mind, really through this whole thing, that I guess is like the small stuff, the one-liners that I'll take with me is give what you receive and, be with people. It's not about being better than people. It's not about being worse than people. It's about being with people.
Yeah.
And I think if we can really do that and see past kind of some of the differences that we're talking about and see people and as deserving of honor, even when it seems so hard to, whenever their actions don't line up with that whole, you deserve honor, but always trying to find a way to show them honor, I think it would really change a lot.
You know what breaks my heart more than anything is whenever you feel like you're having a conversation with someone you have a relationship with, and at some point they tell you, you don't even know me. Mm-hmm. You have no idea who I am.
Yeah.
And sometimes we take that as an insult, and it makes us mad, and we say, well, that's your fault. And maybe it is a little bit their fault, but I think going back to what we're saying here is maybe we need to stop trying to make things happen and listen sometimes. Slow down and listen, not be haughty in our mind, not jump in our own wisdom, but be willing to listen to even the lowly, the lowest. And really try to understand people and not try to think that we know everything. Because that's when we get in the biggest trouble, when we think we already know without listening to the explanation, without listening to someone's reasoning. That gets us, I think, in the biggest trouble in relationships, and wherever we feel like we already know and don't take the time to listen. Yeah. What else? So, out of all these weeks, we've been talking about relationships. We spent a lot of time doing it, and we appreciate you guys allowing us to do that. Obviously, some hard things in here because I think, and we only say these things because I think we are beginning to understand just how important relationships are.
I mean, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, if that's what, hopefully that's what you got out of this is, the reason relationships are so important is because I think we said it last week, our relationships with people is a reflection of our relationship with Jesus. Yeah. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Like, the relationship, if your relationship with Jesus isn't right, your relationship with people probably isn't going to be right. Mm-hmm. And if your relationship, here's the hard thing though. If your relationship with people isn't right, your relationship with Jesus probably isn't right. If this is a reflection of that, then if this is not good, this can't be good either because you're reflecting what that is. And I think if we can get that in our minds, that to understand that our relationships with other people is supposed to be a reflection of our relationship with Jesus, that we would probably put a lot more thought into how we do that and giving honor to people, right? That thought of being at peace with everyone and giving honor to that someone, if we view it as a reflection of our relationship with Jesus and we want to give honor to Jesus, then that's what we got to do right here too in order to have it be what it needs to be.
I think it would have been awesome to just flow through the whole Bible, not just Romans 12, and see how, even when God was giving commands, it was all relationship based.
Yeah.
It was all about bringing people together. All the commandments in the Old Testament, that's one of the crazy things to me is that, a lot of them don't make sense to us because we live at a different time.
Yeah.
And,
definitely.
It's amazing that we do because we can eat bacon now.
Right.
But
big plus on that.
But every command that God has ever given has boiled down to love God, love others.
Yeah.
And that's relational, which means that everything that we read about in the Bible is relational. It's all about relationships. It's about being right here and being right here.
Definitely.
And so, this is such a big deal.
Yeah.
And I know I've enjoyed kind of just taking a step back and getting back to that these past couple of weeks.
Definitely. So, that's our class for Wednesday nights, the relationship class. That does not mean we're done on Wednesday nights. We'll continue to have this stream. If you have questions or something that maybe you need further explanation on that we've said, please reach out to us. Allow us to explain what we're saying. The worst thing that can happen in a relationship class is to hurt our relationship with someone else. That's not the goal. It's all to help us view each other in the light that Jesus has called us to view each other in. So if there's questions, if there's something that you might think that needs to be addressed, please let us know. If there's anything, if there's something that you would like us to have a class on, something that you're interested in, this is the time to ask that. Because, when we get into our curriculum, we have an adult education committee that puts a lot of work, and we have awesome classes, everything. But maybe there's been something on your mind that you wish that we could talk about. Right now, when me and Daniel are doing these live streams, we want to do what is important to you guys. And maybe there's something that hasn't been talked about in a while that you want to talk about. Please let us know so we can do a class on it. Like I said, for the foreseeable future, we don't know how long, at least through May, we know that we'll continue to be doing these Wednesday night live streams for class. So please let us know if there's something that you want us to touch on during that time. Once again, Sunday, there will be 3 services, all identical. So don't feel like you need to come to more than one, because it's going to be the exact same thing. 8 o'clock is more for our empty nesters, some of our elderly. Just so if you have children under the age of 10, we ask that you try to go to one of the 10 o'clock or the 1 o'clock service. There is sign-ups through the email that Steve sent out last week, as well as the monthly that was sent out. There's a link, QR code on that. If you could sign up so we can kind of look at what we're looking at for number-wise, so we can make sure that we're social distancing and doing all those things, please make sure that you look at that. If you do not feel comfortable coming, do not feel like we're trying to get you to do that. Stay home. The live stream will still be at 10 o'clock, and we know you'll be worshiping with us through that way too. So don't feel like we're trying to force you to come. We want you to feel safe. We know that all the answers aren't there yet, but we do have this ability now through the governor's recommendation, so we want to honor that. And those who do feel comfortable and want to come, we wanted to make sure it's as safe as possible. So another one of the guidelines from the governor was anyone 10 or older wear a mask. So please, if you plan to attend, make sure that you wear a face mask for that service. Anything else we need to tell them that you can think of?
Not that I can think of concerning that.
I believe that there is an EDM meeting, so if you're elder deacon minister, I think as soon as the live stream ends, right about 7:30, that will start. You should have gotten a Zoom meeting link through your email from Tim, so make sure you check that, or you can ask one of the elders if you did not. Once again, we appreciate you guys. We love you guys so much. We thank you guys for, get your words mean a lot. We're not doing this just, it's different whenever you don't get the reaction from people, and we've kind of adjusted to that, but whenever you guys do, let us know what you think and your input on those things. It means a lot to us, so feel free to do that. But more than anything, we love you guys. Stay safe. We're glad that we have an opportunity to maybe see each other, looking forward. But once again, in our relationship with everyone, with each other, with the world, with everyone who we come into contact with, make sure that you're representing Jesus in the way that He's called us to. Mm-hmm. I think it's what this class has been about. Yeah. Dan, you want anything else?
Not really. Hey, I think it's your turn to pray.
I've
prayed every week, man.
Okay.
I think it's your turn.
I love to pray, so let's.
Yep, that's right.
All right, let's pray. Father God, we love you so much, and we are amazed at what you do. You've created this earth. You've created how we move and breathe and in the intricacies of our bodies and how it all works. And God, we're just in awe of all of those things. And God, just now as we look forward at hopefully healing in our country, healing around the world with this virus and some uncertainty, God, we just pray that through everything, you heal our hearts so we can have the kind of relationships with each other that you've called us to have, that our relationships with others reflect our relationship with you. And God, we pray in everything that we always give you honor, so in turn that we give honor to others. God, we just pray that you once again be with all those who are sick. We have several here that are struggling. Continue to be with them, heal them, allow us to do what we can to be your hands and feet. Be with the doctors and the nurses and all those who are doing everything they can to keep us safe and healthy. God, but most of all, thank you for your Spirit, thank you for your love, and thank you for your Son. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Love you guys.
Love y'all.